Good evening, everybody. Welcome to our webinar this evening. It's an absolute pleasure to have you here and to be talking to you. We're delighted to see you here. Thank you so much for joining us. We are very excited about Houstone School. My name is Stuart Locke. I'm the Chief Executive of Advantage Schools, and it's my pleasure to be presenting to you. It's a real shame we can't do it personally, and we are hoping to do so next month to meet many of you in the community. And over the next hour, we're going to tell you about our vision for this new school in Houghton Regis, tell you about what we anticipate with the school, answer as many of your questions as we can, and take away any queries that we have from you in order that we can answer them in the future. To be really brief at the start, we got involved early in 2020 and spoke to people in the area and decided to bid for this new school. We won the bid, and we know that there were 9 other school trusts like Advantage Schools who had bid for to open this school. We know that locally people feel somewhat, rightly or wrongly, let down. I've spoken with the Member of Parliament, with councillors, with local residents, and the only thing I'm going to say on that at this stage is we will try really hard not to make promises that we can't keep, and be upfront about where we disagree or we don't know about things. I hope that tonight will be the start, not the whole. There will be lots of opportunities to speak with us, to meet us. This won't just be the next hour. So please take a note on the contact details at the end. Ask lots of questions tonight and afterwards. We're not going anywhere. What I want to say to you is that if you want to ask a question this evening, if you look down the bottom of your screen, there's a Q&A button there. And after I've introduced my colleagues, during the evening, we'll either answer them via chat or we'll answer them at the end, or we might keep some until later on if we go over time. We're going to try very hard to stop at 8:30 and make sure that we give you the rest of your evening back in the spirit that we're going to get to know each other, we hope, over the next few months, and indeed over the next 5 or 6 years if you're thinking of sending your children to Houstone School. So the question box at the bottom for questions, please. So I want to introduce our team, some of whom you're going to meet this evening. First of all, I said that I'd introduce myself. We're going to make this as informal as possible, and we will try really hard not to talk in jargon. We know that educationalists often use acronyms and words that can mean very different things. We're going to try and be as clear as we can. The Trust Central team is over the next couple of slides. People who work across our schools. Some of us on these slides teach in some of our schools, and some of us are important back office support staff that support our schools to make sure they're as good as they possibly can be. I introduced myself at the start. My background before I was the Chief Executive of this trust was I was a secondary school head teacher. I've been the head of 3 different schools relatively successfully. Simon Campbell will join us this evening. He is our Chief Operating Officer, an experienced now non-practicing solicitor who is also the project manager on this project. He is taking us through to opening Houstone School in September of 2022. We have Sally Stanton, who's our Director of Education. She is a curriculum expert with a national reputation, and she's going to join us this evening as well. Not joining us this evening is Jenny Hill, but I'm sure you'll meet with her in the future. She's a Chartered Accountant, our Chief Financial Officer at Advantage Schools, and also not joining us, but you will definitely meet and hear from, is Sophie Heron, our Executive Assistant, who will often field your questions and queries. She's super organised, and we hope to get to know you. And the rest of our team, we have Naomi Bell. She's our Director of Maths. She looks at maths particularly across our schools. Michael Cox, who looks at PE, community and partnerships. You'll hear some of the things about our existing secondary school this evening. He's the reason all of our pupils play competitive sport and take part in what we call electives, and we'll explain those in a bit. We've got Jane Heron, who is joining us this evening. Jane is founded our existing secondary school in Bedford. She's an expert in behaviour, routines. She's been the head teacher at our existing school and the deputy since it started. And she also leads on our behaviour hub, where we support other schools with managing behaviour across the country. We've got Paul, who isn't joining this evening, but he's brilliant on making sure our buildings are safe, fit for purpose, and that they put education first. And John, who's good on data, reporting, lots of computery things that I'm not such an expert in. And for example, Naomi Bell, Michael Cox, John Moore, and Jane Heron all teach at Bedford Free School at the moment, but they're all involved in the Houstone team so that we can establish it as well as we can. So I want to start just by outlining what we stand for, like what is Advantage Schools. We're a school trust. Sometimes you'll have heard them called multi-academy trusts. We tend to prefer the name school because that's what we run. And we're really ambitious. We think education can be better in the United Kingdom. And we're trying to show how it can be better by the way that we run our schools. We currently run Bedford Free School, which is our secondary school, and Elster School, which is a primary. Another school in Bedford has asked to join us, and we expect them to be able to any minute. But both of the schools that we run at the moment are very successful. I invite you, well, we'll talk a little bit about the Ofsted reports, but I invite you to look at the Ofsted reports and the outcomes of both of those schools. We stand for very high expectations and aspirations for our pupils. We stand for respect and strong behaviour, for honesty and transparency. And as I said at the start, we believe that education nationally can be better. We think that the UK can do better in education, and we try to show how. That isn't supposed to be criticism of any individual school. In fact, we've borrowed lots of things that we do in our schools from high-performing schools. But we do think that things can be better than kind of the average is now, and we're trying to make that the case. It is certainly the case that we expect Houstone School to be one of the best in the country. I mentioned really briefly just now that we're also a behaviour hub lead school. We're one of 22 trusts that have been trusted to be able to support other schools that might be having problems with behaviour and making them better. And that's on the basis of our experience with managing behaviour at our existing secondary school. Locally, we're a delivery partner for a national organisation to deliver the very latest professional qualifications for teachers that are being rolled out in September and then in November. I do need to say it's really important that at Houstone School, we will have a principal who will decide how to best meet the needs of local families. We'll get to know them, we'll be a part of the community. So many things will be decided by the head. Like, we're not going to tell you every detail about the school, and in some cases we might be able to say we think it's going to be like this, but it's subject to what the principal decides and our work with the principal. It's really important that our head teacher runs the school. It's not run by us centrally across the whole trust. It's really important that our schools serve the local community. We're hoping to appoint the principal next term. It's not guaranteed because we want to have the opportunity to get the very best applicants possible, and if we don't get somebody who's good enough, we will advertise again. But we're hoping to appoint them next term to start work before we open the school. So we will tell you this evening and over the next few months lots about what we stand for, but it's important to say lots will be at the discretion of the principal, which I hope is what you would expect as local community members. So we often talk about this being our vision. This is what we mean by when we say that we don't think that what we do in education across the country necessarily is good enough. We certainly think it can be better. And here, as I said, we don't mean to criticise any individual school, because everything we've done at our schools has been great practice we've seen at other schools. But looking at that quote, we believe that given the right circumstances, all children are capable of extraordinary things. The right circumstances are what we try to provide in our schools. And I'm going to hand over to Sally to talk you more through.
So one of the really important principles to us is that we believe all the children in our schools are entitled to a full academic curriculum, and we want all our pupils, regardless of their prior attainment, to achieve excellent outcomes. And that means even if they're studying subjects that maybe have a reputation for being particularly challenging, such as the sciences, the humanities, languages. And we are confident that we can include all children in that ambition. So firstly, that's because when children transition to secondary school, there are some who may still need some support with reading, maths, for example, and we know that that is really important to them to ensure that they can access all the other parts of the curriculum. So we make sure that we very quickly identify who those pupils are, and we give them some really effective what we would call intervention. So it would be in the form of specific lessons targeted for them to make sure that they are ready to study at secondary school and that they can then access those really challenging subjects. And then secondly, we work really hard to make sure that we are providing the absolute best learning environment that we can for pupils so that they can really thrive, so that they can really learn. We make sure that we use absolutely everything we know about how pupils learn, and we always have that in mind, and we use it to maximise pupils' chances of success. And what we find is that pupils are then really motivated by this feeling of safety and this feeling that they can be successful, and they then become keen to learn more and more and rise to the challenges that we set them. So, you know, often children and families, they have really high aspirations, and we see it as our job to enable them to actually make those aspirations achievable for them. So our belief is we want your children to have options in life. Our job is to make sure that those doors are open to them. So if they decide they want to go to a great university or they want to work towards a career in a challenging profession, we want to ensure that they can.
And Jane, you founded Bedford Free School, and you've got some examples of this, and also I know that your daughter went to Bedford Free School.
Yeah, so I think Sally's covered a lot of what we do in practice, but it's important for me to say that my driver behind getting involved initially in 2012 with Bedford Free School was as a parent and a teacher practitioner in Bedford. And at the time, both my children were at school, and I felt as a parent that the schools were not good enough for my children. So I became very interested in the school being set up and got on board. I was actually the second person who was employed and got on board even before the school was opened. And I wanted Bedford Free School to be very much what I wanted for my own children. And at a very basic level, that was for them to feel safe and happy at school, because I feel that safe and happy children are then able to get on and learn. So we have worked hard putting in lots of routines and lots of structures. And some of the children might say, oh, it's about rules and being strict, but for us, it's about routines and structures that enable the children to learn within school. And we will go on later to talk about the Sophie test and some of those things that we do within the school. But that's my drive, and that's how we pitch everything at Advantage Schools. If it's the Sophie test, and what would we want for our own children?
The Sophie test is really important to us, and we're going to talk about that. You'll hear us talk about that throughout all of the time that we're opening this new school. So why are we doing it? What's in it for us? Well, as I said, we want to show that things can be significantly better. And I've met some really good people in Houghton Regis. I've met some people who serve the local communities of Luton and Dunstable who do things really well. But we think as an area on the whole, pupils can achieve more. If we look at Ofsted reports and outcomes, we think they can be higher. Outcomes, I mean results. Okay, and we run schools that are a bit different. So we think we can contribute locally to the economy of schools, if you like, the suite of schools all being a bit better. We're setting ourselves up to work with local primary and secondary schools. We're not coming in to tell anybody that everything they've done before is rubbish. What we're saying is that we want to provide another option, a choice locally for local families. So we want people to come and have a look at us, and we will invite other schools to take anything they think we do well away and borrow it if it's going to make their schools better as well. We want to work together. So as I said, I'm in touch with local chief executives of other trusts and head teachers, and I'm going to actually early in September ask some local primary schools to host us, that we could meet some of you in person. And why else are we opening this school? Well, we think there is a demographic need. We think there are going to be enough pupils to support another school in the area. We hear a lot about houses being built, and we know there have been some promises about that in the past. but we understand that there's going to be the need for choice and for indeed extra secondary schools in the area. We also, and I said this a little bit earlier, we know that some local people feel, for good reasons, I'm sure, let down by some promises that are being made. And I want to repeat that we're trying really hard to not make promises that we can't keep. To be honest, when there are aspects where you might not agree with us, and we know that you might not believe what we say until you see it, that's fine. We're really happy for you to judge us on our actions. But we would say, and I think Jane will support this, that if you want to come and see the sort of school that we're going to open, we have opened one in 2012. We're going to learn from the mistakes there, but it is a stunning school that my daughter is going to, because I'm really putting my money where my mouth is. My daughter's starting in a couple of weeks' time at that school. Simon, is it worth talking about the building a bit? Because I know people will start to see in Houghton Regis the site and what's happening.
Yes, certainly. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us this evening. I'm Simon Campbell, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer for Advantage Schools. I'll be the one working with the local authority regarding the physical build of the school, and it's fair to say we are genuinely hugely excited to be involved in the building of what we anticipate will be a fantastic facility for the local community. The building contractors, as you'll have seen, are now busily working on site, and we understand that the local authority as the client are liaising with them on an ongoing basis to ensure progress is being made as expected. Representatives of our trust are again next due to visit the site in September to check on progress. As a trust, we obviously have our own preferences in respect of the build and the site, and we've identified areas in the original plans where we feel that better use can be made of space and where we can improve the educational experience for the pupils who will be attending the school. These have been passed on to the local authority for consideration and costing, and we're going to be meeting again with the local authority shortly to discuss how achievable some of these ideas are. We will, of course, have an eye to the financial consequences and knock-on implications of any proposed changes to the original plans. I hope to be able to update everyone further as the project progresses via the news articles on the website, or if you have any further questions, do feel free to contact me by email. Whilst we're all hopeful, of course, that this school will open on time, it would be foolhardy for us not to make some plans for what might happen in the event that the school is not ready, whether that's due to weather, COVID, Brexit, or any other unknown issue or event. And I know that the local authority are considering all options currently and have started liaising with us about a plan B should this be required. I'm not in a position yet to give you further information about what that might look like. However, again, I will keep you up to date as things progress, and information will be available on the website as soon as I get it. Please do remember that we are actively inputting our views on the site, but that we are not the people in charge of the building contractors, and we cannot therefore control tightly their working practices or directly impact upon their speed of progress. What I do want to reassure everyone present tonight about is that no delays will be effectively of our making, and we will ensure that our input to the build will be timely and appropriate. Paul Smith, the Trust Facilities Manager, who you've already heard reference to, and myself will continue to work with the local authority and the building contractors throughout the project, and we are fully committed to make this a school for everyone to be proud of. There's lots of work to do. We will be there throughout, and I look forward to updating you further as soon as I do have further information.
Thanks, Simon. And you've been involved from the start. You're the project manager, and you've actually visited the site. We've had a few questions, but there's one that I think's worth just addressing now. If you can say anything, and I'm not quite sure how. But I'm not an expert, so I don't know. But Ms. Mills has said, as a local parent, I see the site every week and doesn't see much progress. What is the plan, as it doesn't look like there'll be a building ready for next September? We don't think there have been significant delays so far, do we?
We've not been made aware of any significant delays so far. When we visit in September, we're expecting to see much more structural progress. At the moment, it's been mainly ground clearance and that type of work to get ready. I know there have been one or two issues around archaeology and other things that have needed to be addressed. But when we go back in September, I would expect to see significant headway. And again, as I said, I'll pop up another news article as soon as I've got that.
Yeah, and it is worth saying that that's beyond our control. So it's not something that like we're not responsible for building the school. We're responsible for running it once it's built. So we will, of course, we do liaise with the local authority, but it's worth repeating that. There are 3 other questions which I am intending to get to as we go through the evening as well as we can. But that was an important one on building, so I think it was worth taking at that point. So I wanted to just look at our existing school for a second for you, because it gives you an idea of what we're aiming for at Houstone School. This is the last set of exam results which were taken externally. They weren't teacher assessments, that were taken at Bedford Free School in August of 2019. And really important is that all of our academic subjects had very, very strong results. Really, one of the ways that we've done that is we spend a lot of time doing what we can to make sure that our teachers are subject experts, and it means that, and Sally has led significantly on this, but it means that our outcomes in Bedford Free School, the important one that you can see there is the progress 8 of plus 0.8. Now that puts us in the top 150 schools in the country. It's not quite where we want to be, but out of more than 3,000 schools, it means that we're doing pretty well. The average for progress 8, that score, is 0. And if a school, and there are very few schools that do, but if a school gets a +1 score in progress 8, it means that in every subject, that pupils have got an average of a grade higher than pupils from exactly the same starting points in their school. And if it's -1 in every subject, an average of a grade lower, averaged out across the school. So plus 0.8 is very good, and we were anticipating going significantly higher before we had the teacher assessments that we've had, understandably interrupted by the pandemic over the last couple of years. So I want to say that I say about our schools that we want success to be desirable, demanded, and achievable. Now there are 4 words there: success, desirable, demanded, and achievable. The significant word is success. We can measure success in a range of different ways. You will probably have your own definition about being happy, about being, fulfilled, and so on. But I would say at school that we're not ashamed of the fact that it includes leaving with a suite of qualifications that allow you to go on to the next stage in your life. That's definitely the case for me and what I want for my children. And you heard Jane Heron talk about the Sophie test. Sophie is the name of our founder principal in this school, his daughter, and Sophie is, and the theory behind the Sophie test, everybody in our organisation talks about this, is that if it's not good enough for our own children, then it's not good enough for our schools or for the children of our families. That's absolutely important to us. And I expect my own children to get good results at school and be happy, to not be bullied, to be able to learn, to be in a firm environment where behaviour is good, like really important to us. And so we measure ourselves by that in every decision that we take. And it includes their academic achievement. And I think it's worth us just having a look at the school. This was an inspection in January of 2020, just before the pandemic hit, where you can see some of the quotes from our Ofsted inspection. I invite you to read the entire thing online. It's freely available. And I'm going to leave those up for you just to have a look at, to see where it is that we've been successful in our existing secondary school that we set up 9 years ago. So if we just go on to the next slide, and you'll be able to see I should have said at the start, you'll be able to see the recording of this webinar on our website after today, so you can see it again and see what we've said and hold us to account for the things that we've said. One of the questions that's been asked is about, well, there are 2 questions, and I think it's worth taking them here. One is about retaining teachers and so on. I want to say that at Bedford Free School we've had, for example, this year there are 2 teachers who are moving on of our 36 teachers, and I don't know if the question is referring to an existing school, but we're running a completely separate school. We're not taking over an existing school or anything like that. So all of the teachers at our school will apply to us to work at Houstone School. This is a brand new school. And a separate question somebody asked was, what year groups are we going to take? We've been asked by the local authority, unusually for a new school, to not just take year 7, but to take years 7 to 10, so 7, 8, 9 and 10. And we've agreed to do so, but families will have to apply through the local authority. We anticipate there'll be plenty of places for local families. There's 180 per year group, but families will have to apply to the local authority through the local authority admission system in order to access Houstone School. We'll talk about admissions a little bit later. So there's those 2 questions there. So on this slide, we've talked about offering a choice, and here are some of the most obvious ways that we offer a choice in our schools. We can say that our staff will know our pupils and their families, but we also expect of parents, for every parents' evening, for them to be there. We expect parents to sign and abide by our homeschool agreement, the same as we expect our staff and our pupils to. It's a partnership, and I said we had high expectations. We have high expectations of pupils, their families, and our staff, and we promise to know you and know you well. We expect you to play your part as well, and I know Jane's going to talk about that a bit later. We think that all pupils are capable of academic subjects, and all pupils are capable of accessing university at 18, so we want to give them that choice. We are focused on routines, good behaviour, and making sure that all pupils can learn very close to 100% of the time. As I said, when I send my children to school, I worry about bullying, and I worry that they might have learning time stolen from them due to bad behaviour, so we take that very seriously. We have a longer school day. We don't know exactly what it will be at Houstone, but for an example, at BFS, we have learning time between 8:30 and 4, but we're open, the doors are open between 7:30 in the morning and 6 to support working families, so we have study clubs and so on. We have reading every day. That DEAR is drop everything and read, but it's reading along as a class. We read classic works of literature and we read out loud. We train the pupils to be able to read out loud, supported in a culture that is supported. And there's reading in a lot of lessons where we share our reading out loud. We have electives during the school day. In many schools, these are called extracurricular activities. We schedule them for during the school day so that all pupils can take part, and they all take part during the school day. And I'll talk about some of the examples we have on the next slide in a minute. This supports sport and additional experiences, and it's the reason why almost every pupil before the pandemic played for the school team at Bedford Free School. Our culture was everybody gets to take part. We encourage everybody to take part. In fact, we expect everybody to take part. We think that's what's best. We have prep. Prep is a period of silent study, usually at the end of the day. It sounds like they wouldn't, but pupils really value prep. And it allows them to do that often in year 7 to finish their homework, actually, but to prepare for the homework. We know that stereotypically boys find it really hard to start on their homework. But if they've got 40 minutes of prep at school where they're studying in silence, then we know they've started on their homework and it's easier to complete it at home. And it helps us with our high expectations. So we run prep, something quite unusual for a state school, but we do that in our existing school. And we anticipate, subject to discussions with the principal when we appoint them, to running something like prep again there as well. And trips are an entitlement. I'm going to talk about those really briefly in a bit. Sally, did you want to say anything else on this?
Yeah, I think one of the things that is different in our schools when we walk around them and when we go into classrooms, to me it's really apparent that through our development of our staff, our training of our staff, we really pay close attention to ensuring that all of the teachers have a very consistent approach, which gives pupils a real sense of knowing what to expect, knowing how they can achieve success. But it also means that pupils get equal quality. So whichever classroom you go into, it's not kind of a bit of a lottery which teacher you get. And we know that teacher quality does make a difference to pupil learning. particularly with the pupils that need most support with their learning. So, and you know, many parents will know kind of that feeling of what teacher has my child got, and how much often that's really important to you to know your child's got a good teacher. So what we do is we work together with a really clear focus, not only on what we're going to teach pupils, but how we can absolutely best teach it through the subject specialists, through our heads of department, really working collaboratively with their teams. And then this whole kind of school culture of it just being a very efficient learning environment, where because the focus is so strongly on learning in the lessons, the time that we have with pupils is really well used, and then the pupils are able to make really good progress. So that consistency is really important to me, and is one of the things that I think makes our schools really special.
Yeah, agreed. And Jane, I didn't mention our approach to special educational needs and disability. Did you want to come in on that?
I can do. So it's widely thought that the very best schools has very, very low number of SEN. So that is, and I could just explain that. That doesn't mean that conditions that students may have go away. Of course, if you have a condition, you have that condition for life usually. But what this means is that schools are not having to do something different for those with SEN. So at Bedford Free School, for example, we have the same high expectations for every single child. And it's the quality first provision, or the universal offer, that's the offer that every child receives, is so considered and effective that most of the needs are met within the classroom. So if I get, Sally's already touched on the routines that is very helpful to every single child, but particularly to those with conditions. But other examples is that, for example, ensuring movement around the school is orderly and purposeful, allows children with sensory issues to feel calm and safe. Quiet classrooms with focused, well-behaved pupils enables all children, and even those who find concentrating more difficult, to avoid distractions, and they're able to hear and listen to what the teacher's saying. Another example is approaches will be literacy friendly, which means that seemingly very minor details are considered, such as, for example, copying off the board, which is very difficult for children with dyslexia, or adding line numbers to text that children are reading to give easy reference. Attending to those sort of details, which is what I mean by literacy friendly, helps children with dyslexic traits. So what we find is when the universal offer is good, that's the things that Sally talked about and some of the examples that I've given, then the vast majority of pupils can access the mainstream lessons and be where they need to be, which is in front of their subject teachers, who are the experts, and they're learning the great stuff. They're doing what every other child is doing. So what I say to our staff at Bedford Free School is we're not doing something different and special for those who needs it. We're just doing something different and special for everybody, and that benefits all students.
If I could just sort of come in there just to add something extra, and that bit about it benefiting all students, I think that's so true as well, because as you kind of know, somebody might still find learning very difficult, but they don't necessarily meet a threshold where they would be entitled to some extra support. So by having that like that focus that Jane spoke about, making sure all those little details, all those kind of marginal things that we can do to make the learning environment, to make the learning resources, to make the teaching as excellent as possible for the pupils that most need the support, actually it means everyone thrives, because they all then have that they're all focused on the right things. There aren't those unnecessary distractions that sometimes can get in the way of any pupil's learning.
Thanks, Sally. And thank you, Jane. I wanted to go through these slides, but I think that I'll go through them relatively fast, because I can see there are plenty of questions that have been asked, and ones that I know want to get onto. And please do continue. If there are questions that we're not sure of the answer, we'll give you either a tentative answer or say we're not sure, and we'll go away and find out. But we do want to know about your questions, concerns, like worries, etc., etc. So I mentioned the electives, the extracurricular activities. There are about 25 we run at Bedford Free School, and these are the sort of things we include. We'd expect to run something similar. I'm not sure about rowing because there isn't a river next door, but our approach is that we engage the community with what we can get involved in. So these are some of the electives I just pulled off of our existing electives at Bedford Free School, and they're really important to us. And I also wanted to mention the arts, and I wanted to mention the arts because it's often thought that because we talk about having like an academic focused school, because that's unquestionably what we are, that the arts aren't important. But actually, one of our roles is to ensure that pupils, as they move into adulthood, get to do things that they enjoy and do for the sake of doing, going to art galleries, playing music, enjoying things that might be outside of them. They'd experience them as children. And so one of the things we do in our school in Bedford is, because the local private schools have an expectation that everyone will learn a musical instrument. Well, if it's good enough for pupils at those schools, it's good enough for us as well. So we teach everybody to play a musical instrument in our secondary school at BFS, regardless of their background or their experience. That's something we take very seriously. And so I wanted to assure families and the community that we take the arts really seriously, hence having the space but on the curriculum time for those art subjects, but also having the electives available and the additional things that we do as well. And I spoke already really briefly about sport and recreation, about our extensive links, but Houston School have lots more space than our existing secondary schools. We hope to do it differently, but at Bedford Free School, such is our determination that there's an entitlement to these. As I said, nearly every pupil plays for the school team, a school team every year, but we don't even have enough space for to host a single fixture in anything. So that's the sort of thing we put on, because we know that where there's a will, there's a way. We think that's the sort of school that we'd like our kids to go to, and many of us send our kids to, our children to. So that's where we are. Jane, I wonder if you could talk about pastoral care, given it's your an area of responsibility. It has been an area of responsibility at Bedford Free School.
Certainly. I'm going to start back with the reference to the Sophie test, and perhaps the very first thing I said about my driver is being a parent. So pastoral care is really important to us, and it also ties in with our mission statement. We believe that given the right circumstances, and actually the families are part of that circumstance alongside the school. So for us, pastoral care starts way before the student starts at the school, and that comes with an induction, quite an intensive induction, where we write letters, but then we start to meet with families. You would probably meet with a tutor, and then obviously a head of year, or we call them pastoral leads at Bedford Free School. So it starts from induction. We have, I've worked in other schools, and I certainly feel that our induction is, we give more time to inducting our students from year 6 into year 7, but also obviously in year admissions as well when they're older. Every child will have, of course, their own tutor, which is a standard across schools, but we do say that we'll get to know parents very well, and that tutor is on the end of an email alongside the pastoral lead, or what traditionally is called a head of year. So we feel that's actually the best way to contact, because a member of staff in a school, because as you'll know, staff are teaching, but we at Bedford Free School say we'll get back to you within 48 working hours if you've got an issue. And we welcome meetings as well to discuss. Face-to-face meetings are often better quality, so we would welcome you into the school to discuss whatever you felt you needed to discuss. We have key workers, we call them learning mentors, so students who may need a little bit more pastoral care beyond their tutor or beyond a head of year will get a key worker. And our pastoral systems ensure, again, I'm going to go back to those things that I said at the beginning. The children feel safe and happy, they're able to learn. Of course, safeguarding is a real key priority for us, so we want to make sure that every child is safe. And also attendance is really important to us as well. So our pastoral care looks at attendance and ensuring that the children are in school every day, if possible, because we know, again, statistically, those children that are in school every day with very good attendance do the best, and those who aren't are disadvantaged. So that's a little bit about our pastoral care. Do you want me to continue? So it's, as I said, the mission statement at Bedford Free School is we believe that given the right circumstances, every child can achieve extraordinary things. And that, for us, the circumstances is the involvement with families. So it's really, really important to us that you as a family are involved. Obviously, we do the main you know, we're in school day to day, and we do say in the induction that when you sign up at Bedford Free School, you sign over your child to us and you trust us. Stuart said right at the beginning that this is all about options, that we want to give you an option of another school, but we hope that if you choose to send your child to Houstone School, that you are very much aligned with the philosophies of what goes on. So we aim to communicate really clearly with parents and as much as we can, alongside doing what we do in school. We hope that you're aligned with what we do. So there's plenty of ways that you can communicate with us in person, of course, via telephone. We'll do lots of letters, newsletters, etc. I said email is a really good way of catching up with teachers, because they're able to catch up with those at the end of the day and get back to you, or teachers or pastoral leaders. Obviously, we send out lots of texts. The website is already up and running for Houstone. That's a source of information. At Bedford Free School, we have 2 parents' evenings a year. As I said, at year 6, that starts very early, round about April, after the offers go out, but then when the year 7 start, we'll have a how are they doing very early on as well. But all other year groups have 2 parents' evening a year, and we do run parent forums where parents get to have their say and make suggestions perhaps about what's going well and what they think could be even better.
Thanks, Jane. So and I wanted to put this slide up just to acknowledge that that this is going to be challenging for us to work through over the next year. That come July 2022, in our existing secondary school, we'll have transition day, we'll have pupils in from the primary schools. We'll make sure we establish our expectations, and that we make sure that people are comfortable. We don't know how we're going to do that at Houstone School in the first year, at least, because we're going to be accepting in 4 different year groups in the first instance: year 7, year 8, year 9 and year 10. And we also don't know what the building will be like, but we will make sure that we make transition as smooth as it can be. And one of the things that we are likely to do, subject to the planning of the principal, is to do something like a staggered start come September 2022, so that we could get to know people very, very well, and we could get to establish our expectations. We do hope that we will know who we've appointed to teach in the school a long time before the school opens, and so we'll be able to do quite a lot of work when we're clearer about that. But this is one of the things we will keep on our agenda, and we know you will keep on your agenda if you choose to apply to send your child to Houstone School. We think it's very, very important. I wanted to put it out there, even though we don't know exactly how it's going to work at this stage. And on to admissions. So we're non-selective, as I think we've hinted at or said. We wouldn't ever run a selective school in our trust. To apply for a school place, you do so in exactly the same way you would for any other pupil via Central Bedfordshire Council. The deadline's October the 31st, 2021. But it is really important that everybody makes a positive choice to want to send their child to Houstone. We want to develop that relationship with you. So the only way to do it is via the local authority applying that way. It is subject, and we will be in their local authority booklet. I'm just checking that Simon's nodding his head, because that's right, isn't it? But there will be an asterisk next to us, because we are subject to a consultation, which we're about to tell you about. We'd like you to fill in, please, and a funding agreement which needs to be signed by the Secretary of State for Education. As somebody asked a question in here, what if the school doesn't open? We see no reason why the school won't open, although Simon did say that it would be foolish for us not to make contingency plans for if the building is not available. And certainly if the building isn't all available, then we'll look at how many pupils we have and so on. But we have no reason to suspect the school won't open, in terms of like it won't open at all. It's just that we know that from other projects up and down the country opening new schools, sometimes there have been stags as it starts. I can promise you that the school, when it opens, will be, we'll have routines, we'll have behaviour, we'll have expert teaching, and we'll make sure that people make progress. That's the most important thing for us to make sure we establish a really good provision for you. And on to the consultation. Oh, did you do the consultation already? Onto the consultation. Just please fill it in. It's on our website on the front page. It flashes up on houstonschool.co.uk. Like we'd really like to be able to say we've got a significant number of local people who have filled it in. It does go to the Secretary of State to decide whether they're going to give us a funding agreement and fund the school in the first place. So it is really important to us that you do that. If you feel that we should open this school, we very much hope that you do. Sort of finally, we're on to questions, and there are lots of them for us to answer. I think I'm going to try and do my best with them, and then ask my colleagues just to come in and interrupt me if I'm saying things that they can add to, or if they think that I've taken the wrong emphasis or misunderstood the questions. The first was a very recent one. Does it include students currently at a local school that have, like, everybody has to apply for a school, apply for a place at Houston if you want to come to Houston. It is so nobody will get transferred from any local school to Houston School. It's a completely new school run by a completely new trust by us. So, it's a different school that you're applying to come to. Okay, a few questions. Mr. Clark has asked a few. Will your school have a sixth form? The answer is we intend to, but we don't know what stage, and we don't know anything more about that. That's kind of on our agenda for once we've opened the school, and there is space for a sixth form, so we intend to is the answer. But I don't want to make any commitment beyond that at this stage. We want to, one of the things we're really keen to do is add to the local economy and choice locally. So if sixth forms aren't all full locally, or they're offering the same thing as us, we might want to support them, or I don't know, like I'm speculating hugely. So but the answer is we intend to. I think that's the kind of best way that I can say that. There were a couple of kind of mistyped questions from Mr. Clark. I don't know if there's something you want to repeat in there. Miss Hart said that are we aiming to go beyond year 10? So we're only offering places to year 7 to 10 in September 2022. So pupils who are currently in, or who in September 21 will be in year 6 to year 9. So those are the pupils who should, the families that should apply. But we will go up to year 11 for definite and see them through their GCSEs. And as I said, we intend to open the sixth form. High on the agenda early when we open the school. Please come in, colleagues, if there's anything that I get wrong, or just nod if you think I'm getting it all right. There's a question about children who currently feel let down by their current educational settings, and I want to be really clear that we don't seek to make a judgment about the experience that children have had, but we do have a lot of experience of children coming to us having, frankly, not knowing very much, or having a particularly difficult time in a previous school. We have had a lot of success about it in our existing school, but I can't claim that we know the full extent of what pupils will come in with. We have an intention to use robust assessment, i.e. to find out what pupils know and don't know, to establish that we are a different school to wherever they've come from, that we have routines like you're able to see, as I've said, at our existing secondary school, and that we have firm behaviour. But that also, if, and somebody's asked a question about particularly what about if a year 10 pupil comes, they've only got 2 years left. Like, we will listen to families and listen to what has happened before. And I'm not one for lowering expectations for any pupils who come to our schools in year 7. But I can imagine, for example, if somebody's had a particularly tough time from year 7, 8 and 9 and comes to us in year 10, and they're likely to get particularly poor results in their GCSEs, and it might be better for them to focus on, let's say, 5 subjects rather than the 8 or 9 or 10 that we do in the school, then I can imagine us agreeing to do so and agreeing to focus on those. But it's really hard to talk generically when we're talking about what is the right thing for individuals. What I can say is that we've got good experience of making sure that that we cater for individuals. And Jane talked about are wave one or universal provision, but that doesn't mean we don't make exceptions. And I do understand that locally, from some of the parents who have contacted us, there might be some reasons for us to make exceptions or do something like extra special, if you like. I don't know if you want to come.
Stuart, could I add to that?
Oh, we all want to add to this one.
Just there was a slide earlier on that quoted some of what Ofsted had said, and I wanted just to make reference to one of those quotations. I think it said something like, a child had said, my life has been transformed. I can't remember the exact words, but I wanted just to explain that those quotations actually came from children who were in year. So that's not, they didn't come from year 6 to year 7. They came to us actually in year 9 or actually in year 10 for various reasons. Obviously, I don't want to disclose too much information. Either they've not been successful at their other school, or maybe actually they've been permanently excluded from their other school. So I just wanted to point out that Bedford Free School, that those quotes have come from children who have come later on, and we were particularly proud even this year of some of the results of those children who came to us as an in-year admission in year 9 or year 10, who just slot into us and slot into our routines. We work them very hard. I don't know if that's come across clearly. We have the expert teachers and all the routines and all the diet of the universal offer that we do every day, but we also work them very hard in order so that they can be successful and get them focused on their learning. So it is worthwhile reading that Ofsted report and recognising that that's children who've come higher up the school rather than started with us at year 7.
And Sally?
Yeah, I wanted to add sort of on the question about sort of inspiring pupils. I think I mentioned earlier the relationship between being motivated and being successful, and I just think, you know, what Jane's talked about there in terms of the routines and the expectations, pupils know exactly what we expect from them, and that means that they have the opportunity to be successful in meeting those expectations every day. Nothing's unclear, nothing's different from one classroom to another. They know exactly what to do, and so they can be successful in terms of behaviour, in terms of how they interact with people, but also in their learning, through kind of really careful and through our professional development of teachers to make sure that we teach as best we can, pupils experience success in the classroom, and that is massively inspiring. You know, if you're trying to do something really hard and someone shows you how to do it and you start to realize you can do it or you're getting better at it, it's a really motivating thing. So I think a lot of that as well, that is the success of our schools, is that we do think really carefully about making sure that pupils are able to be successful. And Stuart, I just wanted to go back to you because you mentioned assessment, and I think sometimes when we talk to parents about assessment, it can feel as if we're talking about, you know, maybe labelling a child or sticking a grade on a child, and that isn't what Stuart means. What he means is we every lesson are responding to what we assess, you know, whether that's a frown on a student's face that indicates they maybe haven't quite grasped something, or whether we've asked a question and they haven't been able to give an answer, immediately, like using that assessment, do they understand? Can they do what I've asked them to do? No, they can't. Okay, what do I need to do to make sure they can? Rather than just kind of carrying on teaching and pupils getting left further and further behind. And I just wanted to clarify that.
Thanks so much, Sally. I really appreciate it. I've got a few more questions which I think are important to try to get through. I'm really sorry if I missed them because some people put in the chat. It's much easier to see them if they're in the Q&A, but I'll try my best. I've got a question: how will the holistic curriculum be funded? And I think what's being referred to there is you mean the electives and the longer school day and so on. And actually, it's important that we say this. One of the things that we ask our teachers to do is to work longer hours at our existing schools than teachers do in other schools. But we take away some of the things that we think make less of a difference to pupil progress or to the quality of our schools, so that their work-life balance is significantly enhanced. And that's something that means that teachers stay working with us for a longer period of time. So we don't have any extra funding for the curriculum. We certainly don't charge, I think, in all of our electives, actually apart from rowing, which I mentioned, there's no contribution, and there's certainly no contribution for anybody from who is entitled to, who accesses this. So pupils that access the pupil premium or qualify for the pupil premium. So that's important to say. The second question from the same attendee. So will the behaviour policy be available on the school website? It will, but that's something we need to discuss with the school principal, and so will be much later in the school year. You can see the behaviour policy for Bedford Free School on the Bedford Free School website, and certainly anything around policies like that we will need a local governing body to establish. I do want to say that we are after quality individuals locally who can be on our local governing body. We believe in local governing bodies, but we don't just appoint anybody because they fancy it. We appoint people who have a mix of skills that can make our school, can help our schools be one of the best in the country. The third question for this person is, when will the process of appointing staff members start? Well, I said earlier we're hoping to appoint a principal this coming term. Once we appointed the principal, as you would imagine, the principal will be involved in appointing the rest of the staff for Houstone School, and so that's where we will work on the basis that happens. I don't know if you're aware of how school appointments work, but generally appointments for the new academic year happen between kind of February, March and May time. We're hoping to do it earlier than that, but we're going to take our time to make sure we get the best possible teachers. We know that that's really, really important. And a really apt question from his heart again is, could you visit Bedford Free School to see what it's like? Like, totally, like, we love having visitors. It's prior to the pandemic, we actually had 300 school leaders visit us, so in the 2 years before that, to see what we do that's so different and to see how behaviour is. But also when parents come to the Bedford Free School, where we get like 400 applications for 100 places, but when they come, like, some of them come and look around 3 or 4 times, really to make sure they're making a positive choice. And that's exactly what we want you to do. It's just a shame that we don't have like a school, Houstone School already, for you to see that what I'm saying isn't just kind of bluster and so on, because we said that before. But of course you're more than welcome to do so, and we hope to make that easier for you, but that's something I'm not allowed to promise at the moment, because we don't know exactly what's going to be possible. But we're going to look into whether we can make that easier for local residents to go there. There's 25 miles up the road to Bedford to see our existing school. A couple of other questions. I've got a question: will there be a diverse senior leadership team and teaching team in order to represent the growing diversity within Houghton Regis? I think it's really important that we're as diverse as possible, but I want to be clear, the quality of the work of the people that work at Houstone School is the most important thing for us when we appoint teachers and school leaders. What we do is we use best practice in every sense of our appointments to make sure that there's no blind spots or no unconscious bias. So, for example, we take names off of application forms when we're shortlisting. We prepare questions in advance in which everyone gets the same questions and things like that. But it's really important that the quality of teaching and the quality of leadership is the primary thing in our minds when we're making appointments. But we do think that diversity is really important. We're just aware of how important it is that we hit the ground running with a quality teaching team. I don't know if I'm just checking who wants to come in. Mr. Clark, we've got 2 minutes, so I need to be really fast. Mr. Clark, do current pupils of the old school have a guaranteed place at your school? I think Mr. Clark is talking about Houghton Regis Academy, which I know is closing at the end of this academic year. There's no guaranteed place, but if you're a local resident, there's no way you won't be in the first 180. Our admissions criteria, which is on our website, has pupils within the EHCP and looked after children in first and second. I can't remember which way around it is. And then it's effectively siblings. There are no siblings at our existing school because we don't have any pupils at the moment. And then it's distance from the school gates. Simon, I've got that broadly right, correct? Simon's.
Yeah, you've got that broadly right. Certainly on the information that we're expecting for the new school, it is looked after children and children who were previously looked after, but immediately after being looked after became subject to adoption, a child arrangement order or special guardianship order, and children who've been in state care outside of England and ceased to be in state care as a result of being adopted would be the first oversubscription criteria for the new school. Then it would move to priority will next be given to siblings of pupils attending the school. Then it will be priority to children of staff who've been recruited to fill a skill shortage, then other children. And as part of that, the tie break is effectively distance, children living closest to the school will be given priority for admission, and distance will be measured from the child's home to the front gates of the school in a straight line.
Thank you. What I love about you, Simon, is your attention to detail, and I hope people have seen that there to make sure we're absolutely accurate. Absolutely brilliant. Thank you very much. And then, Mr. Clark, you've got a question about options and will they be carried over? Like, I don't know, because it depends what they are, but that's actually a really important question. I think we need to outline what our curriculum will be prior to the application deadline. So it's a useful question that I find very hard to answer at this stage. And I think it might be hard to answer definitively. What I can say is if you apply to our school and your child is going to be in year 10, then we expect to run 2-year GCSEs. So they will start their course and finish their course in those 2 years. So we'll start from the beginning, if you like, regardless of whether they already taken the course or not. We believe in 2-year GCSEs, 2-year Key Stage 4, because we believe in a broad and balanced Key Stage 3, i.e. years 7 to 9. And we think that should be as broad for as long as possible, rather than kind of pupils making choices perhaps when they might be too young to do so. That's our belief. Some other schools run differently, and I don't make a judgment on that, but that's our belief in how we run. But I recognise the concern there, and I think that's an individual question for us to perhaps address with you separately.
Stuart, can I just pop back to admissions? And I'm sure parents will know this, but just a reminder that those parents of children with an educational healthcare plan would actually not go through admissions. They go through the local SEND team, but I think parents know that anyway. So I don't want to patronise anybody, but I think it is worthwhile saying that just as a normal school, we follow the normal procedures.
Thank you so much, Jane, and thank you so much to everybody for joining us. We've got a couple of questions coming through. What I want to say to you is that we're not going to, I promised you an hour, it's been an hour and 1 minute, so I've sort of broken the promise there, but I hope you forgive me. If we just go on to the very last slide, please fill in our consultation. And what is next is that we can't run an open day at a school, but we expect to run these at least monthly with updates for you. So if you're on our mailing list for this one, you'll automatically get mailed for the next one. So please look out for that. There are updates on our Twitter account, our Facebook account, our Instagram account, although I'm too old, to understand anything about that, and on our website. So please do follow us on those locations as well. As I said, please fill in the consultation that we just referred to. It's on our website. Tell people about it. We want to build something in that school. And when we are able to, and I think it will be next month, but I don't know for sure, and we come down and meet with us. Like, if I'm sending my child to a school, I want to meet the people who are going to be responsible for her education and her welfare. I say her because I'm talking about my 11-year-old, but her or his education and welfare. We really, really look forward to meeting you. And again, thank you so much for being here. If there are questions you've just asked that you want us to answer, I promise to answer them next time. I'll bring them up. But thank you very much, and have a lovely rest of the evening. Should say goodbye. Thank you.